Good day, and welcome to Hanovi Global Network. I am your host, John Hanovi, and it never ceases to amaze me the level of hypocrisy that exists in this world today. Now, here you have it. The Supreme Court has made a decision concerning Donald Trump's eligibility for the ballot in Colorado and across every other state. And yet still, the media mob is having a meltdown. The so-called political pundits is having a meltdown. The so-called commentators is having a meltdown. The so-called journalists are having a meltdown. So it just goes to show that all they're talking about, being defenders of democracy and labeling others as threats to democracy, goes to show that everything they have said is a lie. None of it they believe in. They have unmasked themselves. With the Supreme Court's ruling, they have unmasked themselves. That in many respects, such behavior is un-American. Such behavior is anti-democratic. And this is not coming from the layman. This is coming from some of the legal scholars. This is coming from some of the people that you think would know better. From people who've been past judges. Now we are going to take a look at an exchange between a retired judge, Judge Luttig, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it sounds like Luttig, and Jake Tapper. And if this is the honest feelings and opinions of Judge Luttig, then I believe there needs to be, a review of his judicial record. Because it goes to show what he has said. He definitely does not have any respect for the Constitution and ultimately the rule of law. And I want you to look carefully at the exchange with Jake Tapper. And many a times you would see that Jake Tapper himself was frustrated with what he was saying. Jake Tapper himself did not believe anything he was saying. And Jake Tapper was like, you remember the response Nathan Wade gave when they asked him, did you hang out or did you spend time in a cabin with Fannie Willis? And it took him like forever to answer. Now, Jake Tapper asked Judge Luttig, a simple question that would have taken probably a couple seconds to answer, or a minute or two at best. And he went on and kept rambling and answered everything else but the question that Jake Tapper asked. And after a while, you could see that Jake Tapper was saying, basically, by his facial expressions, oh my God, this is so boring. You need to get out of here. Oh, I'm tired. Let's get out of here. Is this going to be over anytime soon? When you attempt to deny the American people of the opportunity to decide for themselves as to who they want to be a presidential candidate and as to who they want to vote for, and ultimately as to who they want to lead them, then you are venturing into dangerous territory. And you can only be described as a saboteur of democracy. You don't hold the right to say that you're a defender of democracy. Everything you're doing is antithesis to the fundamental principles of democracy. But don't think the American people are foolish. They have seen, and those who have not seen will see through all of this. Here's the clip of the exchange with Judge Luttig and Jake Tapper.
That the Supreme Court would affirm Colorado's decision to remove Trump from the ballot, calling Colorado's decision unassailable in every single respect under the Constitution, unquote. I guess the justices didn't see it your way. What's your reaction?
So there you have it. It brings into question his competency as, a judge. Because he said, he wasn't like a little off. He wasn't just a little wrong. He said that the Colorado decision was unassailable. Unassailable. So he was so convinced in the rightness of his opinion and analysis of what was done in Colorado that it was unassailable. But the Supreme Court said it's downright nonsense, it's unconstitutional, okay, and it's reckless. By using another U word, they made a unanimous decision. So Judge Luttig, I don't know, it really brings into question your competence on these matters. And I know, you're in retirement, I don't know, if CNN is going to, pass you, a bit of cash, you know what I'm saying? And you might have calculated that it's better to say something that is in line with the political leaning of CNN. So I understand. I understand the position you were put in. But next time, do what is right and not what is politically correct.
Today's ruling, Jake, was both astonishing and unprecedented, not for its decision of the exceedingly narrow question presented by the case, though that issue was important, but rather for its decision to reach and decide a myriad of the other constitutional issues surrounding disqualification under 14th Amendment. In reaching and deciding those questions unnecessarily, the court, the majority, as the concurrences said, effectively decided that the former president will never be disqualified from holding the presidency in 2024 or ever, for that matter. But even more importantly, as the concurrence said, effectively the court today decided that no person in the future will ever be disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, regardless whether he or she has engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning.
And there it goes. And again, this is the reason why I said that someone needs to question the competency of Judge Luttig. Just imagine, he says it was astonishing, the decision was astonishing and unprecedented. And just as I have shown you in a previous video where I delved deeply into this matter, you would realize there's none that should be astonishing or unprecedented about this. Because again, as I said in the previous video, in 1872, Congress had a ruling. Okay? And it was a blanket ruling. So, in many respects, this decision was already made. This decision was already discussed. So no one should find it astonishing or unprecedented. And for good reasons, the Constitution didn't want to allow a state to make such a decision because it's reckless and it's dangerous. So the only one who seems to be astonished as someone who is supposed to be versed on these matters is Judge Luttig. And it betrays his familiarity with matters of this nature. So again, it begs a question. We probably should have a review of his judicial record.
It's stunning in its overreach. It's a textbook example, Jake, of the kind of activist judicial opinion from the 1960s and the Warren Court era that begat the conservative legal and judicial movement in the 1970s and 1980s. But of course, it's different here because this is unmistakably a conservative court, most of whose members were leaders of that conservative movement, at least in the 1980s forward.
So, having failed miserably in his predictions, he turns around and tries, in some respect, to insult the intelligence and the integrity of the Supreme Court. And he goes on to refer to them as activists, to imply that their decision is tainted by their conservative activism. Now that is a sore loser. I guarantee you that he would have been much happier and in total agreement if the U.S. Supreme Court had said that Colorado's decision was unassailable.